Good morning. Good morning, Leanne. Okay. So for today, I want to encourage you. I'm going to work on some pelvic floor stuff. I have this squishy ball that you can use, but also just a rolled blanket can also work for what we're going to do at the beginning. And I'm going to try to do a 30-minute class. And I've also got a firm chair here, but you don't have to have a chair. You can sit on the floor to start. But I just want to talk a little bit about alignment and posture for supporting our pelvic floor. So I'm actually just going to sit on this chair to start. Because when we talk about the pelvic floor, it's the base. We can think of our trunk here, this middle part of our thorax, as a cylinder. And the top of that cylinder is our diaphragm, and the bottom of that cylinder is our pelvic floor. And we want to have space here for all of our organs as well as support. We need both of those things. We need space and support. And what happens for a lot of us, especially in our culture, we think we need to have flat stomachs. And so a lot of people suck their belly in and have this chronic tension in their belly. But if we think of this container, you can almost think of it like a toothpaste tube. If we're always squeezing, then all of those contents have to go somewhere. Okay. And there's not really a whole lot of space for them to go up. So that constant sucking in of our belly can push things down. We also want to think about the alignment of where the base or where the top of that cylinder is, or the base of our rib cage, our diaphragm, and our pelvic floor. We want to think about those things being parallel with each other. Okay, and they're working together all the time. They're mirrors of each other. And if we're chronically like tucking our tailbone under with this hunch, right, that's also going to create that toothpaste kind of effect where it's pushing our organs down and out our pelvic floor. So wherever you are, whether you're sitting up on something or you're sitting on the floor, I want you to think about finding a neutral pelvis. So the bony parts of your pelvis, your ASIS, these top parts here, and your pubic bone are in the same plane. Okay. You don't have your pubic bone forward of your hip points. You're going to think about freeing our tailbone out from underneath. So we've got that space, almost that parallel line from the tailbone to the pubic bone. And the ASIS, the fronts of your pelvis, those bony points you can find, and your pubic symphysis on the same plane. So find yourself sitting that way, whether you're sitting on the floor or you're sitting on something. See if you can find that neutral pelvis and bring your awareness to your breath. And see if you can feel that relationship of your diaphragm to your pelvic floor. You can close your eyes and just let yourself feel what's happening inside of your body. So there's things that are really key to pelvic floor health. That first is that alignment posture piece. And the second is diaphragmatic breath. And allowing your belly to be able to expand with your breath. So you're not holding a bunch of tension in your belly. And so see if as you inhale, you can really feel that diaphragm move down into that belly cavity and your belly expand. And as you exhale, you can feel a little drawing in and up of your pelvic floor as your diaphragm lifts up towards your heart. You can find a few shrugs of your shoulders. So you can let your shoulders be aligned right with your pelvis and your ears over your shoulders. We'll just take a couple more breaths here. And I invite you just to bring your hands to your lowest ribs, whether you're wrapping them around or whether they're along the sides. And see if you can breathe some expansion there. Breathe into the feedback, into the sides of your rib cage, those lowest ribs. And relax your arms. We're going to come onto the floor, onto our belly. So I move my chair out of the way. And so in the future, if you return to this class, I'll find a link for these squishy balls. This is really helpful for feedback on your belly, but you can also use a rolled blanket. And you can play with how thick you want your blanket. This will be kind of intense. It could be kind of intense. So we're going to roll our blanket and then lay down with your belly on your blanket, just below your rib cage. So you can kind of feel like your lowest ribs drape over that blanket. And you can use your forearms to prop yourself up. And see if you can just kind of breathe and rock around there. So you can do this on your blanket. I want you to relax through your belly. Don't fight it. And use this kind of as a deep massage. And just noticing any places where it feels kind of tender or uncomfortable to have this in your belly. And see if you can breathe there. So the other option, if you have a squishy ball, is it has a little bit more give. You can just lay on it on your belly and you can rock around a little bit more and kind of get into those muscles. And then find a place where you can just kind of pause. Notice what's happening in your jaw or your shoulders. See if you can relax there. Relax into the blanket underneath you. And then really energetically with your breath, push it away as you inhale. And then exhale. And then we'll just kind of rock maybe to one other little place. Just put a little bit more pressure. You can lean to one side or kind of shift. Energetically really push the blanket away with your inhale. And then release that. Find one last place, maybe a symmetrical place more to the other side. Just leaning on your blanket, really pushing the blanket away with your breath. And then releasing and relaxing into it. And push up onto your hands. Come on off of your blanket or ball underneath you and just find a kneeling seat. Close your eyes and just work on that diaphragmatic breath again. And so we're breathing down, really feeling like you're expanding in 360 degrees around those lowest ribs. And with your inhale, you can kind of let your pelvic floor find that drooping down, relaxing. And with your exhale, you can draw in, find kind of that Kegel action. So see if you can engage the front of that pelvic floor and the middle of the pelvic floor and the back of the pelvic floor with your exhale. And then with your inhale, you can release that action. And find that alignment in your pelvis, and just 2 more diaphragmatic breaths there with some attention to some activation in that pelvic floor as you exhale and some releasing as you inhale. And then we'll go ahead and move on to our backs. So make your way down onto your back. To support our pelvic floor, we really want to be able to move our pelvis. And that means that all the muscles that support our pelvis need to be strong. We need to have strong glutes. Our psoas muscles and all these hip flexors need to be mobile. So we need them to be strong as well as able to lengthen. Okay? Because we don't want just short, tight, weak muscles. We need strength along a full range of motion. Let's just start with finding your back of your pelvis on your floor and just finding little pelvic rocks, just rocking sitting bones toward the floor and then pushing lower back and lifting your tailbone up off the floor. So as we lift our hip points up and exaggerate your lower back curve, this is the anterior tilt of your pelvis. And then pushing those lower vertebrae down and lifting your tailbone, it's the posterior tilt of your pelvis. And just move there and notice what muscles in your belly need to work to make that happen. What happens to the muscles in your pelvic floor as you tuck your tailbone under and lift? What happens as you find that anterior tilt? Now, you might notice with this posterior tilt, pushing your lower back down and tucking your tailbone in, right? That space gets shorter. Your tailbone kind of draws underneath you, okay? And so when we're sitting like this, we've got this chronic tight shortening of those muscles in your pelvic floor, which actually teaches them that, oh, I just need to stay this short, and weakens them. We want to be able to have the full range. Okay, now stop with the back and forth and let's just see if we can rock side to side. So you're going to push a little bit into your right heel as you drop your left hip point to the left, and then switch. Just push into your left heel a little bit as you drop your right hip point to the right. And just rock side to side. And now we're going to kind of go all the way around in a circle. So you can tip over to the right and then find that tucking of your pelvis, find that posterior tilt, lower back into the floor. And then tip over to your left and find your anterior tilt, lift that lower back, pubic bone toward the floor. And just go here around in a circle. Just finding this circle. You might feel your sacrum on the mat underneath you and just feel like you're dialing around. And then we'll switch directions. So dip that left hip point toward the floor and then tuck your tailbone under you. Right. And then drop your pubic bone down. So we're just finding this. So the other question, as you're moving through your day for your pelvic floor health, can you breathe with your diaphragm? Can your pelvis move? You want to be able to move in all directions. And then are the top and the bottom of those that canister of your that inner unit there, are they parallel with each other? Go ahead and stop with your circles and just bring your fingers to that low belly and just in from your hip points. Just you can kind of dig your fingers down a little bit to see if you can find your muscles. Take a big breath in through your nose and then exhale with a hiss through your mouth. Feel that corseting action of your transverse abdominis. Try that one more time. See if you can feel those low belly muscles turn on. And now let's see if we can let them reflexively turn on as you just slide your right leg on the floor towards straight. And then just slide that heel back in. And just switch. We're just going to slide back and forth. And see if with your fingers there on your low belly, if you can feel those transverse abdominis, deep core muscles turn on. Like they did with that intentional hissing exhale. So we're just going to slide back and forth one more time. And then pause. Now just let your right knee rock out to the right and come back up. Left knee out to the left. And see if you can just find that same action in that low belly. Let your lowest ribs be on the floor and see if you can maintain that breath in 360 degrees all the way around. And I'm not letting my pelvis rock. I'm just opening those knees out just as far as they'll naturally go. Just one more time on each side. And then hug your right knee into your chest. Let's lengthen it up toward the ceiling. And then just lower it down to hover. Bring your knee in, lengthen it, and lower. Let's just do one more pedaling action there. Bring it in, bring that foot down. Other side. Left knee in, reach it high, and forward. Knee in, reach it high. And then come on in. So roll to one side and come all the way up into a table. And let yourself just totally relax your belly here. Relax through that pelvic floor and just find some movement of your pelvis. Let's just see, can my pelvis move? So you can find that anterior and posterior tilt here. Just tucking your tailbone under and try to keep your upper body as still as you can. And then lifting those sitting bones back. Just gonna tuck under. Find that activation of that low part of your belly, just like we found earlier. We just want those muscles to be able to work in the context of our daily lives. And so some of this just intentional engagement helps rewire. Okay, now find a neutral place and see if you can rock from side to side. So it'll be different here while we're up. Just find a little bit of C curve in your spine as you just move your pelvis from side to side. And then just like we did on our backs, let's just find some circles. Find some circles of your pelvis here. Go 3 or so times in one direction, and then go the other way. And then pause. I'm gonna grab my blanket again and come back down, but this time we're gonna come on let our pelvis, just like right at your, those ASIS, right at your hip crease, bring that down onto your belly. And you can prop yourself up on your forearms. We're just gonna work on a little bit of hip extension and glute strength. So one thing that's really important for pelvic floor health is glute strength. So that as we're walking, a lot of us have weak glutes because we sit so much. We want to be able to find as much hip extension as possible. So that's just what we're going to work on a little bit here. And it's helpful to bring ourselves into some flexion first. So bend through your right knee and then just lift that right thigh up off the floor and then lower down, and we'll just switch. So we're just working on our hip extension. And a lot of us don't have a whole lot of range of motion. I mean, we're not even designed to have a ton, but that's why it's helpful to have a little bit of lift underneath your pelvis. So we start with a little bit of a bend there so that we can find more. So we're just going to go back and forth, just a little bit of glute activation here. And let this action really be coming from your hamstring and your glute. So your lower back isn't involved. That's another reason we've got the lift underneath the pelvis. So you're really letting this happen from your glute. Let's do just one more on each side. And then come up on your hands. Push yourself up to your hands and knees. You can move your blanket out of the way. And step your right foot forward into a low lunge. We're just going to explore that pelvic movement again here. So tucking your tailbone under and then sending it back. Let's do a few times of posterior tilt, tucking under, anterior tilt, sending your tailbone back. And then come to neutral and see if you can find some lateral movement. So you can find their left hip point out and then your right. And just rocking from side to side. When we find all this support, and moving through our pelvis teaches all these muscles in your core just to reflectively support you. Let yourself be able to breathe. And now see if you can find kind of a circle here in your lunge position. Just finding a circle. And switch your circle. And then find neutral. We're going to toe heel that right foot in line with your left knee. Just find your tandem kneel balance. And just feel all those muscles reflexively turn on to hold you here. And see if you can relax your belly even at the same time all those muscles are working. See if you can relax through your pelvic floor. Just keep breathing. And then we'll just lift that right heel, come onto the ball of that right foot, push down into your left shin, and then see if you can just float that right leg up and come to kneeling. And then step your left foot forward. Find your pelvic movement here. So, it feels like we're not really getting much of a workout. We're not doing much. With all this subtle movement, but it is so helpful for the education of our nervous system and all of those muscles. Now see if you can go side to side, find your side to side shifts. Here. And then circles, find your circles. And the other way. And find a neutral place for your spine and your pelvis, and then just toe heel that left foot in line with your right knee. Just find your balance and calm down your breath. Notice if this side's a little different than the other side. And then come on to that left ball of your foot, lift your left heel, and then push into your right shin. Float those left toes up off the floor, and draw that leg back, and find a standing kneel. Take your knees as wide as your mat, tuck your toes, and bring your hands to the floor, and then push your hips back. So I want you to find an anterior tilt of your pelvis first, and then push your hips back towards your heels. So we're just kind of working on a little bit of a squat here. Sending your hips back towards your heels, and then forward. Sending your hips back, and find that anterior tilt of your pelvis, lifting your sitting bones up and back. And we'll just go back and forth here. If you want to, you can even let your knees go a little bit wider and find that same motion. Stay flexed through your feet, so you've kind of got a 90-degree bend in those ankles and your heels. Just rock forward and back. And maybe find your way back. You can even lower onto forearms and just hold. And then find some energetic pushing of your inner knees into the floor. No matter how wide your legs are, push your inner knees and your inner ankles into the floor. And then release that effort. And then push those inner knees into the floor. And release that effort. One more real push with all your might, those inner knees into the floor. And then release that effort. See if you can find your diaphragmatic breath here. And see if you can feel the relationship of your pelvic floor and your diaphragm. See if you can let those be on the same plane or parallel with each other. So you may need to adjust the height of your torso. You may need to adjust the angle of your pelvis. See if you can find that. And then with an inhale, just let yourself find some space in your pelvic floor as your diaphragm drops down. And as you exhale, draw that pelvic floor in and up. Let's do that one more time here. And then walk your hands in. You can just kind of move your way into it, out of it. I just have to wiggle my knees in. Come up. And we'll end in a seat. We're at our half an hour. Just find your comfortable seat, whether that's kneeling, whether that's going back to the chair. My invitation to you is to find the best alignment that you can with that parallel diaphragm and pelvic floor. Close your eyes. And just feel your body breathe. And feel the connective responsiveness of all of that area of our body that we've worked with today. Nothing happens in isolation. All right, we've got this deep fascia even that connects our diaphragm to our heart, that the pericardium sac that contains our heart is really tethered to the diaphragm. And our diaphragm, all the way around those deep abdominal muscles and our pelvic floor, create this container. That needs to work in concert to really find support and space. And so when we can visualize our movement through our day with all of those parts working in concert, so we're not gripping or clenching in any one place, but we realize that, sucking in our belly is just creating that toothpaste tube effect with our organs, or breathing shallowly is really inhibiting the function of our pelvic floor. We can move with a lot more ease and awareness. So I hope that little practice served you today. Thank you so much for coming, and always I'm open for questions and suggestions. Namaste.